The consent agenda, discussion or action to consider the June 9th, 2021 Public Safety Committee meeting minutes. Is there any discussion or question on those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. So it's been moved that we approve the minutes for June 9th, 2021 Public Safety Building Committee. Have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. We're now open for public comments.
Doesn't look like we have anyone
Okay.
raising their hand on Zoom.
Okay, we'll move to item 3 on the agenda. You've all received copies of the draft RFP, and hopefully you've had a chance to review it. And we'll now open it for discussion. Presenter will be John Call, our city manager and attorney.
Okay, thank you. So we did send out the RFP. A big thanks to Lynn Satterthwaite for putting most of that together. I went through and amended a few things, identified some information that would change. The chief and Laura and his team, or their team, put on some additional modifications as far as what the future needs and expectations are. If I remember right, one of them was we upped our patrol division number of officers and a few other things where we just felt like in the long term it'd be better to have the space because it doesn't, from the feasibility study, it didn't seem like it was going to be a significant space increase. But with what we've talked about with potentially moving the city from 1 officer per 1,000 is the goal to something higher than that. We just needed the space. Sorry, I'm gonna pull it up here and as soon as
John, who have you heard back from?
So Laura had to go on vacation. She's got some for me, but she hasn't sent them to me yet. She will have them to me by the end of the week. So they'll be ready to include and present to the council. Other than that, I haven't got anything else back from committee members. It was, the expectation was kind of to talk about what potential changes we want here.
Ignored my comments, obviously.
Oh, yes, you did. You did call me and we went through the whole thing together.
I did run into Lynn the other day when I was out on the walk, and he hasn't had a chance to get through it yet, but said he'd get through it soon. So he called me yesterday and said that he was working on it. He thought he'd have it read today and get back to it, he hasn't done. Said he was gonna get right on it.
And the majority of it is, you know, I tried to answer the questions that he had identified in the version that this group saw last meeting. And then I think probably the most helpful thing for the discussion, anything that's highlighted dates are things that we're going to fill in when the RFP goes out. But there's the biggest question, or one of the biggest questions is how long everyone thinks the RFP should take to respond to. Obviously, there's the nice thing about earlier in the season, if the build starts next spring or sometime between now and next spring, bidding in the fall seems to be fairly advantageous for these larger commercial groups because they're trying to fill their schedule for the next year. Although that might just be with road construction and those groups that we deal with more regularly. So,
John, do you think by limiting the time that we have in there would prohibit anyone from bidding that would like to be involved? Because they are right now fairly overwhelmed and hate to lose the opportunity. What are your thoughts?
So I had kind of been imagining that at least a 2-month window would be appropriate because most of them could probably put together a pretty good proposal in that time frame with some sketched out drawings and some estimates, because that's anything they give us is going to be an estimate in the sense that they'll say just because, I mean, any construction project right now, it's a cost plus for the most part. Materials are this much money. And with the way it's designed, with a lot of the finishes and the fits and finishes yet to be decided, they won't commit to what it's going to cost for flooring because they don't know what carpet or what we're going to pick. So I think it's going to be a good estimate, but the way this RFP is designed and the way Lynn's designed it is it's been broken down by components, like how much is it for this, so that we can look and compare them together. And we'll be relying a lot on the expertise of this group as we evaluate that to make sure that we're not missing something. As was identified with Lundahl, they were so much lower than a few of them. It seemed like, oh, they must have missed something, because we've had contractors do that in the past on road projects where their tonnage or their yardage was wrong. But found out Lundahl did know what they were doing, and they just had a different way of approaching that resulted in some cost savings.
John, could we, Gary, I don't know. But it seems like they could give us an allowance for floor coverings. They could all give us an allowance for those type of things.
Yeah, you just have to make sure your allowances are apples and apples and oranges and oranges.
It seems that's what a lot of builders are doing. Right? So here's your allowance for appliances or for floor coverings or countertops or whatever.
I think that's a good approach.
And I don't know if the commercial guys will do that or not, but I guess it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah, I don't know how on the commercial end, if they do allowances. Well, usually on the commercial, well, not usually, but on the plans, they'll have a spec of what the carpet you want. The exact model, make, whatever, before you would start. Right down to the doorknobs and everything, so they have a fixed price.
I think it would be good to give them a month to review it, have a meeting with them, and then give them another month to come up with stuff.
And that's something that we don't have the specific allowances, so it's only broke down into here's what it's going to take to do the drawings, here's kind of the construction estimate, and then here's office equipment and the fixtures, or not the fixtures, the furnishings at the end. So it does sound like at the very least we should be expanding this grid if we want to focus on this. Give us an estimate for cost for your finishes, for your flooring, for your other stuff, or an allowance, so that the city knows what we're going to be getting with that. For example, because usually they can give us a sample like, hey, if you pick this carpet, it's $5 a square foot, and then we know if we go higher or lower, that'll be a
Just help us in our bonding amount. Reduce the bond.
yeah.
Just the bond.
Would we be able to find an RFP from another site or another department that's gone through the same process? I know we talked about it at our last meeting, but I can't remember who was going to try and dig one of those up or contact the other cities, and maybe that's still just ongoing.
So there's not, at least the ones that I'm aware of weren't done in the same exact style, which is the design build.
Okay.
The majority of them were closer to the CMGC or the design bid build approach. And so we didn't have a good one to compare to. This contract is modified, I believe, from a federal design build or a state design build contract, but it's not public safety specific.
So that actually, okay, so that brings another question then. Maybe we could get our hands on a contract from another site and another city and review that, because I think you're exactly right. This page right here, that is going to really be expanded, and if we could see what some of the other cities have used as kind of a spreadsheet or as a line item, for their costs, I think we would maybe have more success presenting that to the contractors and say, here are the things we want you to kind of cost out.
No, I think that's a good thing, because one of the goals of the design build process is to get as hard of a number up front as you can. Because otherwise you don't, I mean, you'll get change ordered to death.
For sure.
Or they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't pay for granite countertops, you painted for plywood that's painted white, right? And so I think and some of those things we might set, for example, in the evidence area, we should probably say it has to be a solid surface. Or it has, because we don't want stuff coming in that embeds in,
And
The
solid
type-
surface won't even cut it because you get that fake marble which sucks in stuff.
right?
Most
Which
of
is
it's
a-
seen stainless steel.
Yeah. You get
Stainless.
stainless or
Stainless. yeah.
even granite absorbs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to specify exactly what you want.
It's cool. Enforcement.
Yeah.
Well,
It was suggested that I reach out to JRCA
Okay,
and ask them if they have done any design build project. And they have one Aura PD and one is Clearfield City Hall.
Warren, Clearfield.
and we do have Kendall Tate is one of our participants that's watching from the public with JRCA.
Oh.
So in theory, they might be able to answer some of these questions. So we do have Stephanie, Casey, and Kendall Tate are watching.
Well, I wonder, I don't know if they might actually be able to provide us with a copy of the RFP that they responded to or not, but. Reach out to them.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it'd also be interesting to see, so if they put the RFP out, what the results were, what came back in. Because what do you do with those after they come back in? I mean, do you just stack them on a shelf somewhere, or do they get thrown away, or, would some of those cities share those?
so anything that's a bid is public information. And most recorders keep them physically or electronically. Obviously, the big push is electronically now because
Yeah.
some of those proposals get thick, but imagine if Orem did a design build PD, we could probably see. a good
I could
example
reach
of
out to like our Utah Municipal Clerks Association and request anybody that's done a similar RFP to respond. We have a working group that does that. I can do that as well.
That'd be awesome. That'd be really helpful. That's great, thanks.
Thank you, that's a good idea.
Okay, so then it sounds like we have a little more work to do on this area. So I think the other one that's important to talk about with the group is this area, where this is where some of those changes have been made about the expectations for what the city would like designed into the building. So that when the architects are looking at spacing and designing, this is the section they're going to be focusing on. And this is the one that Chief and Laura have modified a little bit from the original feasibility study. A good example is, like I just mentioned, the patrol.
Do we need to come up with dimensions of rooms that we want, or do they design it?
So they design it,
Okay,
and
so we want 30 stations, so.
yeah, so this says space for up to 30 small report writing to stations. And there's, in theory, part of the expectation from these groups is how do they design that 30? Because obviously if they can get it in a smaller space that's functional, it'll be cheaper for the city to build. And that's in theory why you end up going with that team, is that they have some innovative ideas. And so, but that used to, I think, say, or was it report writing for 20 or 25?
It was 25.
So in theory, we've added 3 more stations. Some of the stuff from the feasibility study was designed for the sergeants, that they'd have their own offices now, but eventually they'd be sharing. So the offices would be designed to be big enough that they could share, but we wouldn't have to at this point because we don't have 8 sergeants. Or 6 sergeants. So this is the other area where having some feedback, and maybe Chief, it'd be good to maybe talk about some of the highlights and the changes and what the group might think are.
So we've gotten some really good input, based off what originally was proposed. More or less, we're gonna double our population, so let's double our staff. But we didn't really think about it in depth. When we start thinking about not only, our population growing, but our business district. with business district comes call volume above and beyond what your population is. It's even more pronounced. And then as you grow, the need for specialties, like specifically like an ICAC investigator, and that's all they do. And we would probably have to branch out and have some specialty. So we just we added like an office in the administrative and the record section, because probably eventually that section will need a direct supervisor, which would probably be a sergeant assigned to the administrative support staff. And then, one more office in the investigations for that specialty investigator that we probably will have to add, or, the police department will have to add down the road at some point. So it was really minimal, but those were the couple of the highlights.
And I would say that the ICAC, as we call it, that can't really share an office. You know what I mean? They have to have a dedicated office because, that's no bueno stuff. The one thing I was going to ask you about on here, the victim advocate, it looks like you have that one soft room set up. Personally, I just think that in the future, you know more about this than I do, because you're in the business, but I feel like in the future, that's going to be an important part of policing, especially as we have an aging population and we've got crimes against older people and that kind of thing, and the crimes against younger people. And, that advocacy position, I think, is going to be important. So I don't know if you have one room or if you have two, if you have one on staff or two on staff. I know that you have two on staff by 2030, but in my mind, I think that section is going to grow faster maybe than some of the others.
It is. It's a little bit different than what we might, in our job. Clark might bring in two suspects to interview simultaneously, and you don't have to separate. Huh? 8. Oh, 8 suspects.
Yeah, we had 8 of them.
I sell them short sometimes. So he would definitely need 2 spaces. So the victim advocate is not have 2 victims, 2 witnesses at the same time. And this room would be set up, I'm just basing this off what we've seen, looking in the modern facilities. It would be set up to accommodate an elderly or, a toddler or a child or everything in between. So I think it would be okay. And there is a space for an additional act.
Okay, awesome.
As well as,
So the news broadcasts of the last while regarding police defunding and all that kind of stuff, a push for more social workers. Does that fit into this same thing that you were talking about here?
Yes, we actually, we're keeping up with that trend countywide, not specific to North Ogden, but the county has a team of, they call them the crisis intervention team that respond to us with every one of our crisis situations.
Okay.
It's working out really well. So.
Nice. And they're responding now without lights and sirens, right? I mean, that's such a better way to go.
and even the investment in the victim's advocate makes a difference, because what it does for the police officers is, one, they're not the one that are contacting the victim, but it gives the victim a resource so that when they go to court, the victim's advocate shows up with them, because oftentimes we're in a courtroom ready to testify especially for the more severe crimes. There's not only one person in the room that's angry at them, but oftentimes multiple people who are family members of the perpetrator. And so it provides that kind of soft approach, that ally that sometimes those folks don't, which is, I've only had that office 5 years, that position.
3.
But
Yeah, it started when I was in.
Yeah.
But I think that and I correct me if I'm wrong, but our prosecution success rate on those type of things that victim's advocate is involved in has been much more successful, in the sense that we used to just have cases dropped because the victim would flip.
Well, I think too, you gotta find that balance Because I think it's not going to deter, but I talked to the chief about proactive policing. If you've been reading a lot lately, this defunding, as they call it, and I agree that we need to take a reasonable approach, but crime is just climbing throughout America because proactive policing hasn't got the attention it needs. So we've got to find that sweet spot, as they say, well, right, chief?
I see Minneapolis, the judge ordered them to hire more police because they cut back so much.
Well, it's hard to find people. I mean, we've got some good folks now, but
Yeah.
it's getting tougher. But, and we're not exempt here in North Ogden. I mean, what do we have, chief, 6 cars, did you say, stolen over the weekend?
We caught.
They caught it.
It's good job. That's not easy to
Trent.
do. That's it.
Thanks to Trent Pumpkins. Didn't he call it?
I'm not
We
sure exactly.
did have a witness to help us out.
Yeah, he woke up in the middle of the night.
That's great.
And to tying back to the RFP, I anticipate this section is what that second meeting is going to, or that meeting is going to be about, where the teams come and ask the questions. Is they're going to say questions like, when you need a room for 16 for the justice court, what is that? What's the purpose of that? I mean, it basically, it's going to serve as a conference room and a jury room. And they might be looking for ways to make that serve another purpose. It might be close enough to the police leadership that it can also be where the chief and the supervisors would meet for their meetings, assuming the schedule could work out. Or they might say, no, the chief and the court can say, no, that's actually a space we can't share. And because we might have a court case that's a 3 or 4 day court, depending on the type of case it is, and that we just can't ever have that scheduling conflict. And so there's just things like that they're gonna need specifics, and some of it will be guessing based on what Chief Quinney needs now and anticipating what the chief in 20 years is gonna be, assuming that he retires at some point.
Yeah.
You're not gonna commit for 20 more years, chief?
No, I won't commit, no. We'll see. So to answer your question a little bit more, I guess, about the changes that we made, it was so that down the road, I mean, because it's hard to anticipate what a future administration is going to want to do staff-wise to meet the needs, which we really don't know what the needs are. So we don't want to be cut. We don't want to leave them with their, with putting people in broom closet. So I think with adding just a few more square feet, we can get those 5 extra workstations and a couple more offices and make sure that we don't leave them in that position. It was really minimal. So, I don't know, Clark, do you think anything else that?
I think it was the whole idea behind it is, it's very minimal to add an office now, rather than trying to deal with that in 10 or 15 years, because you have nowhere to expand other than adding on or something. I think that
Then you end up with
and
something
that's
like
the
that.
same, the same problems that you have, so. That was a big sign of it.
Do we include in this RFP anything about the old building?
We will want, I thought we had demolition in here, but I'll make sure. That, because we will need someone to, after the new building's up and running, take out the old one and then finish the space. So I know I should be able to tell you definitively, but demolition's in there. I'm 90% sure, but we'll
I
make
can't
sure. it's
remember reading
included.
it, but that doesn't mean it isn't in there.
Yeah,
And we talked about demolition of the home over here. And we'll do that. The city employees, let the police demolish as much as they can. And let the fire department take the rest, and then we'll bring in equipment and not.
You might want to do some asbestos checking, because that'll double or triple the price of demolition.
yeah.
Shouldn't have it based on the age.
We,
It can be in sheetrock mud, it can be a linoleum.
Yeah, we'll do the full test.
I know, yeah, I'd tell you, if you could get that done so that they know what they're up against, then they can give you a good bid
I
on
think
demolition.
We're pretty confident we've got some in the.
In the city
This
building.
For sure,
I mean, when we've had ours done, it's amazing what they'll find asbestos in.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to make shingles out of asbestos.
Yeah.
I surprised when they said the linoleum had it in it.
The museum wants to take this one.
Well, and one thing that we will do is in the version you've seen, it anticipates them ordering some of the site studies and things. I think we will get those done in the next 2 months. Just because it makes much more sense to let them know what they have to deal with as opposed to expecting them to do the work, because it'll speed up the design process instead of them waiting for a soil study and things to come back.
So so the city's gonna pay for the geotech then, is that what you're saying, or thinking?
They'll pay one way or another, so you might as well just get one.
We might as well, you're gonna pay for that no matter what. And we know we have water over there. And so dewatering that site for construction as well as after it's up, keeping it dry is gonna be an issue. The home to the east of us has it's not a marsh by any means, so it's not like wetlands or anything, but it's wet ground. And the police station has a grate off the corner of the building that it runs constantly, and it's a land drain.
Wonder how so are we gonna pipe that across the street, or how do we?
So land drain collects the water and it eventually ends up in the storm system and moves out to either detention ponds or retention areas, and then eventually out to the Great Salt Lake. So,
Yeah, we did a house just up around the corner and it was like a river and we just filled full of gravel. River kept flowing when we were all done.
and
As far as I know, they never had the basement.
And like we had those issues at the Parks building, we had the issues at the Public Works building. We've had houses constructed where they sink a foundation and spring comes and water comes out their front door, not their front door, out the front steps. Because it just goes around the building and then that's the lowest point and it drips out their front steps. Because we just have springs everywhere in this city.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting because
Right out here in 2600.
this particular year, whether you find water there or not, I mean, historically though, the geotech will probably be able to show evidence of water or not. But being able to find it this year might be a trick.
Well, if it puts it into perspective, it's both of those areas I mentioned are currently still wet, even with the drought. Because we're right at the toe of the hill.
Take a few years of drought to dry them up.
Yeah. And so it's, anyways, that's some of the stuff that we're doing and we'll modify out of the RFP to help speed the process up.
So I've tried to find a geotech person, anyway, or company to do a geotech, and it's been really difficult. So probably the sooner you're on that one, the better.
And we have I'm trying to remember, it's Christensen something, but they've done a good majority of our sites in the city, and they're usually pretty good about turning them around for us. We're a repeat customer with just issues that come up in the city or, new facilities and stuff. So.
I can't remember, did you say that somewhere attached to this was the score sheet that the selection
Yes.
committee was gonna use?
So it's the last sheet. And I thank you for bringing that up. This is really kind of the last thing to talk about. I did put cost in as 40. I assumed that this group would probably think cost was maybe a little more important than the list of subcontractors, for example. But in theory, those numbers don't have to add up to 100. But when you do the choosing by advantages system the right way, in my opinion, you let everyone know the most important stuff up front, and then you're honest in your scoring, and you just let the chips fall where they may. And so, if cost is the most important thing for this group, then it should get the most points. And if it's not the most important thing for this group, a good example is when we did the skate park. Cost was not the most important thing. The skill of the team designing it was the most important thing that was used to select. And it was a little more than cost, so it had a few more points because the focus was on getting the right facility for the city, not getting the cheapest facility. And so, a good example might be list of design build projects, similar size and scope might be more important than years of experience as a general contractor. Because someone might have 40 years as a general contractor, but only ever done residential buildings, and this is their first commercial bid. They just got their commercial license and they're branching out. Anyway, so this is the kind of, and there might be other stuff on this list that we need to add. This is just 8 categories, or maybe we don't need the list of subcontractors. Some of those will be hard to tie down, except in a bid. I mean, it's just kind of one of those, the subcontractors might shift. With a road project, they typically get their quantities and bids from their subs up front. I'm not sure that they'll be picking a sheetrocker at the time they're putting this proposal together, but they might know between 2 or 3 firms that they like to use. So
would number 7 take in, when we start considering cost, then you have to consider what you're getting for the cost. So, somebody could bid just low end material all the way, and come in with a lower cost. So is there a way to comparably have cost and what the finished product's gonna be for that cost compare?
So that's, in theory, that's the goal of the point system.
The whole thing?
So if you, let's say those were your only 2 items, was cost and what it looks like, you would then put your importance on, do we care more about cost or what it looks like? And you'd assign the point value to the one you think is most important. Or you might say they're equal. Like maybe in this list, maybe there's 200 possible points and there's 40 points for concepts, the evaluation of the conceptual drawings. Because looking at it and understanding what they're trying to give you is just as important as the cost, because you don't want to get something you don't know. So that's what I'm saying, like the proposal completeness and quality. I mean, that's definitely not as important as cost, in my opinion. I mean, each of you have your own, and that's why you're on the committee, but looking through the list, that's what we're kind of talking about, is massaging it. So we're not leaving something that's really important with about a score of 10 and leaving something that isn't that important with a score of 10. Like the idea is this group should fluctuate those numbers so that the thing that's the most important has the most point values. And if there's 2 things that everyone feels are the same, they have a similar point value or the exact same point value.
I take the subcontractors off there. I don't think they're gonna be that important at the onset of the bid.
I'll just give them a lower number.
I would take subcontractors off there and I would put examples of completed projects.
And we'll fix the order of these.
Yeah, but you want something that they've done in the past.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, you want that on?
Yeah, I
Oh,
want
I
that
thought you
on
said
there.
off. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, so in place of that,
Yeah.
let's put that on there if you guys are okay with that, so that we can see some of their work.
Isn't it already on there?
And so it says similar to size and scope.
Yeah.
But do we
Number 2
want,
cover that?
so the question is, like, do you want it to be focused? Because in theory, we could say completed public buildings, or we could say completed public safety buildings. And there might be a point value assigned, and someone this is their first rodeo, will get that for 0, but they could still end up at the top if the rest of their numbers.
Right.
So, but if they don't even give a conceptual drawing for you to evaluate, and you've assigned 40 points, they're probably not gonna come over that hurdle. And in theory, a good example is proposal completeness and quality. It's included on the list, but oftentimes that's kind of a gatekeeper. Like if they didn't give you things that you asked specifically for in the document, and this one does a pretty good job of saying, these are some things we expect, then you check it out from the get-go. But that's, or you give everyone some more time and say, hey, we noticed no one really understood what we were asking for. So everyone, take 5 more days and give us this. Some folks, and we haven't talked about this, will actually say, give us the cost proposal last, like put it in a sealed envelope. So we can score everything else and then do cost last. I don't know that would be very effective in this group with how big of a project it is, but
Although cost will be a big influence.
Yeah.
If you look at that bottom line, say, oh, it might influence your score, so I think that might be a good idea to have the cost portion sealed.
and that's because what ends up happening is, and I try not to do this, but every single time I get a response, I go to the cost first and then I worry about everything else after. And so having it as a sealed, this is the cost proposal, it's in a sealed envelope. And then, because then the committee could look at the other 7 things, find the top candidate. And then, because in theory, when you're looking at cost, it becomes a mathematical equation. If someone's twice as expensive, then they're going to get half the points in theory. But they might have knocked it out of the park on the drawings and specifications. It's exactly what the chief envisions, or this group envisions, I should say. It's not a tin box with a cardboard front door. So and this might be something that the group just needs to spend a little more time thinking about, and you can send some email responses. The only one I left cost at 40 because I just assumed it would be higher, but it could be, the scale could be out of 120 points, it could be out of 200 points, it could be out of 300 points. It just is however this group wants to do it. It could be out of 10 points. Cost could be worth 4, although that's harder to do the choosing by advantages system as you do that. So
The list of building functions and everything that we kind of are hoping for, or expecting or needing, to meet that falls under number 7. Which one of these, coming very close to meeting what we have specified as our needs, would fall under which one of these? I think that, to me, bears a lot of weight.
I think it would come under specifications, but we could clarify specifications to say, because it's kind of shown in that we could reference that area and say, ticking the boxes, meeting the requirements of the RFP, meeting, the stated, I can't think of the term that's at the top of that section, but we can tie it to that. Or we can make a whole nother section that says satisfying the building specifications and requirements as outlined in section 5 or whatever the number is.
Hey, John, is it your anniversary today?
It is.
Let's do this thing along.
Okay.
All right.
I did tell her I was hoping for less than an hour meeting.
All
So,
right, Emily, meeting adjourned.
so I'll if the group's okay, I'll go through this and send it out before the end of the week. I'll add this specifications.
You wanted it weighted higher, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say that would be a higher weight, so you
Well,
get what you want.
So
instead of-
I'll send it out as just this list, and I'll also include the cost list, so it'll be the 2 pages, so that we're just getting feedback on those 2 things, because a lot of the stuff in the RFP, it's a technical thing, it's been used in documents before, it doesn't really need feedback from the group, unless there's a glaring error like there's a few typos. I think in one of them, though, in the requirements, we found out that we were going to put the victim's advocate in the closet. It said storage for the victim advocate.
There's, you see that?
The mayor caught that one.
I'm
But-
happy to prove this.
So-
Just for-
So I'll get those out to the group. It'll probably be Friday, but I'll get them out and just, these are the things we need the feedback on. And if everyone kind of goes through this and assigns their point value, I might suggest that, hey, let's add it up to 200 points just to give enough so that everyone's trying to add everything up to the same number. But I think you'll find that the majority of your will start narrowing it down into the same size, and we could take an average to the council, because we do want the council to approve this on the 27th for release, so that we can get it out and get it started. And we always have the chance to amend it, meaning that we can send an amended, hey, this is the expectation.
Yeah,
Any firm that's going to be involved in this is going to be reaching out to me and the chief and the mayor.
Well, I think too, that we have to have something on here about reputation. Talk about references. Let's be honest, most references you get on the list are people that give you a good reference.
Yeah.
I think we've got people that have been in the construction industry that may be able to have some input on what the reputation is. I don't care how good a builder is, if you can't trust them, I don't want to touch them.
Yeah. Okay. There's a formatting error happening, but I'll add that and say reputation in the industry, because I think you're right. That's probably more important than references.
John, I was gonna just mention one thing on that. On some of these bids, I've noticed that the contractors will collaborate, and then they'll say, okay, well, you're gonna come in at this number, right? Okay, all right, you're at that number, then I'm at this number. You know what I mean? They kind of, is there any way to prevent that?
They do.
So
I guess I'm missing.
So a lot of on road projects, we see a lot of the same subcontractor used. The thing about a building like this is that it's and the parks, in fact, all the buildings that the city's built recently, they're kind of marquee buildings. The only people who spend money on design, the most money on design, is federal, and then state, and then local government. Like they pay for design in a way that commercial or that private industry hasn't until recently started acknowledging the importance of. And so it's a marquee building, and I think they're going to want it to be their project because it's a marquee project for them.
And John, I don't know, I refer to Gary on this, but a lot of these larger contractors have their own employees. And sometimes you get a better quality. I'd like to see maybe something on there regarding use of subcontractors versus own employees, because I think that you might get the job done quicker. I don't know, Gary, what are your thoughts?
I don't know if they have their own employees that do, because you'd have to have a license. Plumber, electrician, or whatever.
A lot of them have,
They're,
their base.
they're the purple that come in and,
Core.
yeah.
So
put stuff out.
I was gonna say, we had a few with our last RFP that went out where a lot of them owned their own excavation company, because that was because then they controlled when they started, and it was easier to control to get the project moving. But it might be, that'll be, in fact, that maybe we can add it on the list as something that's worth some points, is subcontractors versus self-performance, I think is what we typically call that.
And I think you have local on there already, like you have state, whether they're a state company or not, right? Because I think there should be some emphasis on, we've got some great North Ogden companies that could build this. And somehow I think there should be emphasis there, or points anyway.
Okay. Anything else?
No, what an anniversary, so.
That's a lot more important than this.
Yeah, it's actually Bastille Day, so that should be the thing we're celebrating. Yeah.
Great, Chris.
Do we have people attending on Zoom?
We do have two. It's Kendall Tate is on, as well as Stephanie Casey. So they're members of the public. Neither of them are committee members.
Okay, I'm gonna make contact with other committee members because we need a little bit better attendance than we've been having here. And I assume we emailed them, is that correct?
The ones that are here, you got the email, right?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
And you emailed the RFP out,
Right,
except to me.
right.
Where's choice?
Yeah, but so technically, because the mayor's essentially like me and Susan, we're staff members. We're not voting members of this committee. And so you only have 5 of the 11, which isn't enough to, for example, approve the minutes tonight.
He doesn't count. We approved him.
Yeah, I'm getting tired of not counting, John.
Oh, you are on there. Oh, no, that's right.
No, he's listening.
No,
I said that same thing and I thought, no, he's listed
No, that's
as a
right.
member now. So he
Yeah.
is six.
And it's a little unique because we do have 3 members of the staff who are on this committee.
You got to vote last night.
Which is unusual. Usually we don't let the staff vote, but in this case, we thought,
Who's
you know, the
third
2 of
member?
you and Laura.
Oh, Laura.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make contact with the present members of the committee. If we need to, we'll bolster
Well,
it. Add a few more.
yeah, I think there's vacations and just stuff like that. There is a conflict with this date, but
A lot of times they see this one item on here, maybe that's not enough reason to come, but this one is pretty important, but the input here has been really good.
Okay.
From those of you who are attending and have the expertise from real estate, construction, and police department. So we had a good representation, so I think it worked out well.
Okay.
Anything else you need from us, John?
No, I think you've given me a lot to move this forward.
When do we anticipate that we would send this out to the contractor?
So I would like to get it back to the committee, these 2 pages on Friday, and then get it ready for the council packet, which would go out the following Thursday. And the council would then approve it on the 27th. You know, because obviously they're the ones who need to really buy off on the approach. And then I think after that, while we're in the RFP process, it'd be good to have the committee meet and talk and maybe put out some assignments. Like you might say, okay, these 4 people are going to focus on the evaluation of the concept drawings, so that when we bring them in for interviews, they can provide feedback to the group of, hey, we like this and these are the reasons why, as opposed to having the interview group trying to wrestle through that during the interview process.
Who's gonna do the actual choosing by advantages?
Members of this committee. And then
What
we,
is the city council gonna approve that, or are they gonna do their own, or?
The city council this committee will make the recommendation, the city council select the final
and
contractor.
Okay.
We're assuming we'll give a top 2 or something like that, so if they have a problem with that.
and there are council members on this committee. So it won't necessarily have to be the whole committee, but that's for this group to decide. Do you want, you know, a big panel interviewing them all, or how do you want to approach it? It's totally up to this group.
Usually smaller is better in that situation.
But we've, you know, when
'Cause
we,
we picked this, when we did the public works, we picked the skeleton group out of the committee to make with the contractors.
yeah,
If you have too many there, it gets.
but
out of control.
it'll be an afternoon commitment, you know, 3 or 4 contracts in this room with probably an hour to each. I mean, it's a process.
one thing I'm remembering on the RFP, I think on our first meeting, we talked about it. We're gonna allow the contractors 1 site visit. Is that correct? So 1 meeting with the staff, one visit before they put in their proposal.
So we're gonna have the one that's organized, but they'll be able to send questions back and forth. But we'll route them all through one person so that any question that we ask that's asked and answered will go back out on the RFP website and say, here's all the questions,
Okay.
so that no one gets an unfair advantage.
Do
So,
they get 1 site visit though?
well, so we're gonna have a site visit here with everyone in theory. So there'll be representatives from each group.
Okay.
That
Yes,
would
they can
attend.
go get out on the site and look at it. I think that's in the RFP.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, okay.
Anything else, John?
No,
Anything else from the committee?
If I say we let John get home for his anniversary.
Public comment.
That's priority 1. Okay, move on to item 4, public comment.
give them just a sec, see if anyone needs to raise a hand. Nope.
Okay. Thank you again for your attendance this evening. Appreciate your dedication, and I'll make contact with the other members of the committee and see if we need to either add or additional ones or whatever the case may be.
It
Some of
might be
them.
tough to add mayor right now to get people up to speed. I mean, seriously, we may just start this questions all over, so we could just concentrate on getting those who will be participating.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to help you.
okay.
Anyway,
I'll make contact with them and make sure that they are still committed to helping us out. And like I said, we may be in vacation time, or we may be, they didn't think it was, the one item was enough to make an appearance, so. Okay,
Mayor, are we gonna tentatively plan on a meeting next month?
yes,
I think that,
What day before that council meeting do you want to schedule that for?
So it'd be the second Wednesday in August, which would be the 11th. It would
Okay.
normally be that council, and the council's meeting on the 17th next month.
So. Sound fair?
But in theory, the RFPs, I mean, so they'll approve the RFP to go out on the 27th. So council probably won't address that on the 17th. It'll be in October, September, when they'll be starting to, because the RFP will be out and processing.
Okay, that's true. I was thinking, wait a minute.
Yeah, so in theory, it'll be out by August 1st, and that'll start the 2-month timeline. But I do think we will reach out to a few contractors and just make sure, is 2 months enough time? Is it too little, too much? So,
How did the opposition to this go? They didn't make the timeline for it to get on the ballot? Or?
we didn't have anyone request information about how to do a referendum or submit any documents.
Okay, so
So we're past the deadline on Monday, right? So-
No, we passed it, yeah.
So
Monday, something like that. We're past it.
Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good support.
That just comes down to getting money.
write the check.
Which, by the way, Robert sent me a message that I think we need to probably address in the next meeting, which is how can we fundraise for some of the, at least the equipment and other things to see if we can get some contributions towards the building, so.
Yeah, I meant to call you on that.
The best fundraiser is just say we need the money, instead of trying to sell a product that you're gonna
Yeah.
not use anyway, and you're gonna get half the money. You might as well just give the money.
Robert suggested some ideas for consideration, so.
That's my idea of fundraising, just ask for the money. Don't give any services, just.
I'm not getting service, just maybe.
just keep it.
Well, but just, I think what I mentioned to the mayor is just maybe being able to sponsor a portion of the building and maybe a naming sponsor,
Yeah, something like
those
that.
kind of things. So let's talk about that later.
Yeah, maybe the courtroom's name or something like that.
can we go to get like Beehive Bail Bonds to sponsor something?
Right there on there.
That's
Just
all right.
go to court.
So I think we have a phone number, we have to address that.
Yeah.
Get out of jail cards, or whatever the case is.
Well, those are already happening, apparently.
Yeah.
Not from the, not from
Stay out
the,
of jail
not from the chief's point, but.
Okay, thank you all. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I moved and seconded that we adjourn. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye.
all right.
Any opposed? I thought maybe John is opposed.
I'm gonna tell John